nepršoval úplně. No, tam nějaká liveka a potom jsme ještě právě.
Takový pokec, jakože víceméně.
Máš tam nějakou strukturu? Slide Sunday?
Já nevím, já jsem to prostě
Slide
teraz.
Sunday, Slide.
Jasné.
Díky.
Tak jsem ještě ten Kickstarter nějak dokopal, tak myslím, že máme dost toho. No.
To si nedal.
Normálně si chceš tu
Nemáme pivo na čelo, no. Sorry, ale bezpečně.
Můžeš to nalepit někam jinam, kde musíte nalepit na čelo. Na čelo? Ano. To je
Ještě volunteer stánek a přednášející.
Můžeš? Teda to?
To mě někdo zvětšil počítač.
Ale ta flaška bude možná...
Máš to někde?
Mám flašku teda nemám.
Jedná se to ve Getnu, kde to máš?
Kdo by kydal Fedora Pito?
Počkat, to mám nějaká...
To chceš, no.
To tady jakože sokety na odkládání díky křtěnu.
Ano, přesně tak to tady bylo na vrtce.
Určitě pouze bylo přetášečce, tak to je...
To bylo pěkný vlastně.
Ne?
I když člověk jako to začne postupně přepisovat a teď se mu to všechno rozjede, že jo?
No, ale pak když zjistíš jak na to, tak je to pak pohoda.
Co Jirko, nakolik jsi to stáhl?
Nakonec jsem to nerozjel, ale už jsem to překompiloval.
A jasně. To zní úplně jako Cčko.
No, tak je, víš, jak ze začátku jsem dlouho přemýšlel, když je vlastně... Kurňa, litáta nemůže dostat ty čísla, protože Cčku to nejde. Víš, jak kolekovat se jako
Ono to jde různými způsoby. Můžeš použít NumPy. Ale nechtěl jsem zapínat to NumPy, protože...
No, tak ale tím malokem to jde.
Když se poslal...
To je jako tady pro tu dolohu, bys si mohl nastavit statické pole velikosti 100 a věděl bys, že tam stejně nikdy nedostane.
Pointer.
To jsem dělal v úlohách na proktestu,
Já taky.
vždycky.
To vždycky kdo objevil, jak máš ty statický pole udělat velký, aby s tím, že měl paměti.
Jo, a nějaký pole
Nějaký to propojování.
šel na Facebook, měl nějakou staršou infovou věc, potřebuješ postavit můžu od nekať.
To funguje by default, myslím.
A celé to zakomentoval.
No, to tady museli ráno přepnout prvé, ale jinak jako...
To umíš to ovládat, ne?
Když se něco někde odebrat, tak jenom
Počkej,
ráno
ty to normálně strčíš iba, a to mohlo fungovat tak, že to strčíš iba do toho prodáčku, ne?
Jo, jasně, jenomže tam bylo právě...
Jaj, pardon,
Tam byl hozený počítač a ne
to bylo stream stavu.
No, to bylo stream to, ale jsme si říkali, co tam Miro ještě dá.
konečný počet.
Miro takový typický Windows user.
A to vygraješ tu stranou a tam ti nikdo neřeší, jak to trvá.
To právě přišel z rychlý.
Co?
Tak se dělal na tom Rebelixu, tak tam dělal takovou hezkou dobu. A pak
Protože všichni lidi byli tady, kdo se dostane.
Já šel, takže...
Právě naopak si to měl počítat rychle, ale když jsi to prostě hledal v nějakém statickém poli, že jo, tak to bylo mnohem rychlejší, než jsi to měl počítat.
Ne, je to rozhodně lepší, než to psat v Cčku, to 120. Já mám jako volunteer.
Zbavoval, takže to taky
Já mám jako volunteer.
Leda,
Já bych to dal maximálně přítopný, jako.
Ne, to tady nebyla.
To tady nebyla, to
Čau.
Dajme Dragon.
Hledám pod příslibem, že ten sajt naučí.
Ten to odpřednáší, to je dobrý.
No, vy chcete něco jít pak, ne? Tak začněte asi.
Ještě se nezačíná, kolik je?
2,5 minuty nebo něco.
Já se aspoň zatvojím.
To je někdo vůbec?
Jestli někdo kromě nás? To nevím, to je.
Já ti tam strhnu sedm.
Tak mám všechny ty své slajdy, já nebo jak někdo vystřídat?
To si asi...
Tak asi to spíš jenom představ a pak začneme do toho.
Jako takhle. Yeah, so like, one's coming or whatever. So basically, like the idea is mastering the Anaconda installer of this workshop is like we get the Anaconda developers in a room, we get some other non-Anaconda developers in the room, and we talk about topics we think are interesting about the installer and not very well covered often with documentation, or like people may not even know they are there. So they might be using the Anaconda suboptimally because they just don't know about the features and how they can be used. Also, the idea is that basically you should really ask about stuff, give us feedback, like tell us what issues you have with the stuff we cover or with random stuff you used in Anaconda. So basically, yeah, it's not really a workshop in the sense like you install stuff or improve the installer, but we can talk about it. Yeah. Okay, hi. So we prepared, basically like we sent an email to some people who use Anaconda, the Anaconda installer. We got no replies, so we like just discussed some topics that we think are interesting about Anaconda and should be covered, and we prepared some slides about them. So just ask when we talk, when we don't talk, that's not a problem. So I've randomly selected the Anaconda built-in help system slides. So basically, since about Fedora 20 or RHEL 7.1, I think, we have a built-in help system in Anaconda. So basically, the problem is that sometimes you just have an installation process running somewhere, maybe accessible only over VNC or remote stuff, and that might be the only thing you have at the moment. You might not even have internet access, or it's not, like there is an installation guide you can get, but it's online, and you need to basically multitask. You need to have the installation guide somewhere, then you have the computer where you are installing. So we basically, in cooperation with the guys who do the installation guide, we did a built-in help system in Anaconda in the graphical user interface. So there is a help button on every screen, and if you press it, you get the help for the screen. At the same time, it's the same thing, the same content you have in the installation guide. So we don't need to maintain two sets of content. That just used to be something like this on a single screen, and was completely unusable for the custom scope, the custom storage configuration. Now it covers all the screens, and I think it works quite nicely. Like basically, there out of the screen is the help button. Here. And you get a window like this. This is the help viewer used, for example, by GNOME applications and other programs. And this is the content. It looks kind of like when you see it on the website, it looks similar. There are no pictures, so it fits in the window and it covers the screen you are currently looking on.
Possible in non-GUI?
Not at the moment, but we would like to add it to the text interface at the same time. Basically, it might need to have some variants and stuff, but from what I know, the people working on the documentation are open to that, and it should be quite easy technically. Basically, you will run less or whatever until you are done with the documentation and get back to the text interface. Well, basically, yeah, there is a Git repo with the docs. It's all tons of XML. We process it, throw away some stuff that doesn't really fit into our use case, and display with the help. It's currently broken in Rawhide because the help is broken, but we are working on that. Yeah, help in text mode. Certainly, some others already asked about that. Also, like, there's the idea that this should be available just like on a system. Like, you wake up at 3 in the morning and like decide, I really need to learn about the customs code. So you don't need to start an installation for that or open your web browser. Basically, like, the Help has some like built-in documentation index. Another thing is translation. The problem is no one translates the installation guides at the moment. But if someone does that, yeah, then we are ready for that. The localization is built into the system. We just need the content somewhere. Yep. It works. So yeah, that's the help stuff. I think next Will should go next because he has another talk in like a few minutes or whatever.
Yeah, I can do that.
Or I can do another one.
No. Is there a browser on that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then I will try my slides. But it has like 2,000 tabs.
No, not just 24.
As long as I can have one more.
I can't. Oh no.
Check keyboard.
Where's the slash?
No.
There we go. Hey, good. Oh, for the love of nuts. Wrong box. Alright, fine. Are you not? I swear to. Oh, really? Keyboards, man. Keyboards. Why won't it do the thing? Why are you not Control L? Why can't I copy and paste? I thought I was good at computers.
I can do that.
If you can do that. Nobody's gonna believe it.
Yeah, because this is control and this is function key.
Oh.
Because like the
So-
Lenovo is stupid.
I should have known that control wasn't control.
Of course.
I don't like it to the control and function click key.
Maybe.
There we
yeah, it's
go.
doing something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hooray. This is a quick overview of the driver updates disk functionality that's in the installer, which is sort of a little known corner of the installer because most people don't need it, especially in Fedora where you're not generally going to want to install proprietary drivers or that sort of thing. So yes, the installer accepts driver updates disks, which I'll talk about in a second, and you can use them to load updated drivers or other drivers that we might not have present in the installer during the installation. There's a boot argument or a kickstart command you can use to tell the installer that it will also auto-load from specially named devices, and there's also an interactive menu, which is all text, and you can't choose your keyboard type, and it's all in English, and it will never be translated and never use a non-US keyboard. So I don't recommend that. So what is a DUD, a driver update disk? It's just a ISO image. It has some special Yum repos in it. They have some extra files in them to mark them as being driver updates repos. They have special RPMs in them. The RPMs have some extra headers to mark them as being driver updates RPMs. And those RPMs have drivers in them, like kernel modules and firmware and that sort of thing. It does about what you'd expect. The installer, if you give it the right stuff, the installer reads it. It looks at everything that's in the disk. The disk can contain drivers from multiple versions of RHEL or Fedora or whatever. So it looks at everything that's there, finds things that are compatible with the running kernel and installer, and then loads all of those drivers inside the installer environment, and also saves the packages so that when you install to the target system, you still have the drivers running. Why do you care? Well, if you have hardware that isn't supported, maybe you're using very fancy new hardware that has disks on an unsupported controller, or you need to use a unsupported NIC to fetch images or whatever during the install, or you just love replacing the default drivers and you can't wait until after the system is installed to do that. This is the way to do it.
It's important sometimes to make newer driver for
Yeah. Well, in Fedora, it's not as useful because we generally have very, very new drivers and things like that. It's more important in like RHEL and especially older RHEL releases where they are not gonna, it's 5 years old now. It doesn't have support for the newest things. So this is a.
You can have some old stuff. I've got Intel card, which is E100,
Mhm.
and now it's only supported E1000.
Huh.
Okay, so you have to use that to support very old. All right, very old or very new.
Driver downgrade this.
Yeah, yeah. That's the DDD instead of DUD. So to prepare it, it's basically you'll get an ISO image from somewhere. Generally, it's from Red Hat. Although the equipment manufacturers can, like they have them on their website sometimes, but generally it's actually made inside of Red Hat and we give it to them to give to you. You burn it onto a CD-ROM, or you put it onto a USB key. It has to be at the top level of the file system. Or you just put it on the network somewhere. So for whatever.
Yeah, good. That was my question. Do you have documentation on how to generate the ISO? Because it's been a while since I used the driver of the disk. But he had a point with the fact that I need to upgrade remote machine without IPMI or VGA connection or whatever. And I need to use exactly the same kernel module. So how do you remotely inject that into the machine? Because you don't have any network access, so you need to inject first that.
Well, so if you don't have network access, you probably have USB.
It's a remote machine, you don't have access, so...
well, there is a trick you can do if you can PXE boot it.
No.
Then, if you don't have physical access and you can't PXE boot it, how are you going to install anything on it?
Oh, it's easy. I'm just using the PXE kernel in Italy. I just bootstrap Anaconda from a running machine with exec. I reboot the machine on itself, and the kick stuff is injected into the Italy. So can we inject the driver update into the Italy?
Yes.
Oh, then nice solution.
Yes. Yeah, you can totally do that. I actually don't talk about it here because I'm not certain it's actually supported. It's not mentioned in the RHEL documentation.
It works fine.
But I'll tell you can do it.
Okay.
Don't worry. So yeah, that's the other secret method is you can inject it into the initramfs. So you tell the installer, you give it either, you boot with inst.dd equals URL, obvious, or inst.dd equals hd : and then a disk specifier. Yeah, you can do dev SDA, don't do that. You want to do something like label equals flash or whatever. Oh yeah, I did put it in here. Okay, I lied. Sorry. I am right there. The answer to your question was on the next slide. Good for me. So yes, you can embed it in the initrd and then it will load. And this stuff is, I should have had a link here. This is documented in, or it should be documented in the boot arguments guide in the Anaconda docs. It'll auto-detect if you have a device that has the label, a disk partition that has the label OEM drive. It's the same thing as that, except you don't have to use the boot argument. The downside is if your device does not appear you get in about half a second, which nearly everything does unless it's really, really slow, then it won't get detected.
The label should be OEM-drive or flash? In previous slide, it was the label should be flash.
Oh, that's just an example. It's whatever your device is labeled. It could be labeled, hoghead or something, and as long as you have label equals hoghead, it'll find whatever's hoghead and it'll load devices off of that.
The default label is OEM-drive.
Sorry?
Default label is OEM-drive.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's OEM drive, you don't even have to do it. So as I said, there's an interactive mode. You boot with just plain inst.dd, and you'll get a menu. You can pick a block device from the menu, and then you pick an ISO from the menu, and then you pick which drivers you want to install. I don't know why that was, well, I know why it was needed, is because large hardware partners demanded that it be there. Much of the code for this was written under duress, because large partners of Red Hat are like, no, it needs to work like this because that's how we've been installing our systems for 17,000 years. And I'm like, that's a lie, but okay. So it has an interactive mode, which you can use if you want. Yeah, you don't want to know exactly how it works. There's at least one person in this room who has to know how it works, and I'm very sorry. The code's not pretty. It's complicated enough that it's not easy to explain, and really you don't need to know how it works, but there you go. Best practices, you probably, in general, don't want to use this. It's described in the RHEL install guide, which does a pretty good job of telling you how you use it. If you want to make your own driver updates, don't do that. Get your driver upstream, be a good person. If you really, really have to, generally talk to Red Hat. There are no public tools. I have never seen the tools that Red Hat uses. I wrote the code to handle it, but I've never actually seen the code we use to make them. So they really don't want you to have it. There is example thing that we use for testing in the Anaconda source, or you can read the Anaconda source to get an idea of what it is that makes everything special if you want this to work. Generally, we don't recommend that you do this. You should just get your drivers into Fedora if you're working in Fedora, and if you're working in RHEL, talk to Red Hat and we'll help you out. That's that. If you want to know more or talk to me more, there's ways you can do that. So, Thank you.
Já. Co ty?
No vlastně, ty můžeš.
Pojď tam asi, ne?
Jo.
Vlastně tam? Co tam máš? No, to pojď to tam.
To tam půjde.
Jo.
Okay, so my name is Potomac. I'm also a member of the Anaconda Installer team, and as Will, the driver of the disks, and he provided a way to extend the installation environment in some way. And I, with some other colleagues, focused on another way to how to extend the installation environment, and in this case, the Anaconda itself. And we called it Anaconda add-ons just because we had no better name. And since that time, people are suggesting better names, but they started doing so after we said the name. So I had a workshop, I think it was 2 years ago at DEF CON, on developing Anaconda add-ons. So I'm not going to repeat myself, but I would more like to show you what is the current status and what happened since then. So we have the add-on support. Oh, okay. That was fast. Let me check. Okay, so error keys. So, well, so far it has been proving itself to be wide enough for complex functionality. So, well, the API is kind of not strict, but quite small, and you can and very limited. But turns out that you can do complex things with that, and you'll see examples of existing add-ons in a minute. It can, of course, be extended by our team if you need it. So, for example, I think it was quite recently there were some requests that some add-on were implemented for CentOS wanted to access the packaging payload in Anaconda, and we are not currently doing this because so far there has been no reason for that. But it's quite a simple patch for us, so we can expose these things. But instead of exposing everything and then trying to reduce it somehow when we don't know who uses what, we chose the different approach that we only pass the add-ons the information that we are sure they can use and they can safely use, and then we are adding these extra things on demand. Yeah, the API is not 100% stable. We, for example, did a rebase in Rails 7.2. We changed the API, but it was really all these changes were really really small and easy, and we helped out the add-on developers to include these changes in their sources. There can be 3 types of add-ons: either Kickstart only, or with a graphical user interface, or supporting our text mode. The Kickstart support is a must. So there can be nothing that is supported in the graphical user interface, but it's not supported in Kickstart. So the Kickstart support is a must, and then the graphical and text mode extensions are optional. Yeah, so I'll go through some existing add-ons. Of course, there's the Hello World add-on I wrote as a proof of concept of the add-on support in Anaconda. It provides the basic structure and template for developing other add-ons. And so it happens that it is a starting point of, as far as I can tell, probably all the other add-ons. So if I look into the sources of all the other Anaconda add-ons that exist, they have something from the Hello World add-on in them. So it turns out that it's probably a good starting point. And of course we use it for testing, because as we do changes, add-ons of course may stop working. So the Hello World add-on is, since it's the kind of a reference implementation, we use it for testing if the add-on support. The most complex add-on so far is the Escapeit add-on. It was written by me as part of my master's thesis in the university, and it's basically an integration of Anaconda and the Escapeit tool for scanning your system with the Escapeit content for security issues and configuration issues. It is included in the RHEL 7.2 installation images, so all RHEL 7.2 installations have this available. So it's an example of a successful project, I think, kind of. And it's quite extensively tested and maintained, because once it started to be used in the RHEL installation, the Red Hat quality assurance team jumped on it and found many bugs and little tweaks that I kept fixed. I'm still keeping fixing. Well, another add-on is the DrAdam add-on, and it is the replacement of the first boot DrAdam plugin, because we don't really like first boot. It is an ancient tool that we want to get rid of, and so we are trying to move everything from first boot to either Anaconda or our new tool that is called Initial Setup, which uses the same, I would call it a toolkit as Anaconda, and you can actually write an add-on that is capable of running in Anaconda and in both Anaconda and Initial Setup. So this is a replacement for the DrAdam plugin. It was originally authored by our team member David Shea, who was present on my workshop on how to write Anaconda add-ons, and so he wrote one on the way back home, and it's now the DrAdam add-on. It uses a new feature, which are the header options. In a kickstart file, if you want to use an add-on, you type %add-on and then there is an %end, and everything between these two lines is passed to the add-on. But in some cases, it's just easier to use some options. So the %add-on option line also now accepts options like -- enable, -- disable, or whatever. So it's an alternative way how to process the data from user in a simpler way, I think. It has both graphical and text mode versions, and yeah. So it allowed us to drop that ugly first boot screen. Another example of the same is the subscription manager add-on, which is a replacement of the first boot plugin. And since these two things were the only two things left in first boot, with these two things moved into Anaconda and Initial Setup, we can get rid of first boot. Actually, we can't get rid of it completely because there are some third-party plugins that we still need to run. But unless there are such plugins, we just skip first boot and it doesn't show.
People still have them around like 7.2.
Yeah, I know.
I heard about some of them.
Yeah, so it runs in the Initial Setup utility, which runs during the first boot, but it has a terrible integration into Anaconda's user experience and UI, because they basically took the very same UI and just move it from first boot to Anaconda, where the user experience is totally different because we don't use a wizard-like model, so we are not going sequentially in screens. You are just doing changes all at once and then like commit to them. So they didn't change anything like that. And so far it has only support for graphical user interface. And it definitely needs more love. So if you are willing to volunteer, it would be great if you could make it nicer. And most recently, our team member Brian has been working on the Docker add-on. Of course, it has a great potential because it has Docker in it, so it's something we have to do. It allows to set up and run Docker before rebooting into the newly installed system, and you can choose from the storage backends, so you can either use LVM thin provisioning or Btrfs or overlay FS. So you can tweak that. It is in a very early development phase, so the functionality right now is quite limited. But as I mentioned, it has a great potential, and so far it only supports Kickstart. But I think the plan for this add-on is to also do some fetching of the containers and things like that. So you could specify which containers you want to get to your system in a Kickstart, and then you can just install thousands of machines with this, and you will get something like that. Yeah, and as you can probably imagine, I'm not sure if you know that, but the OSCAP tool now can scan containers, so we can actually combine these two add-ons to like fetch the containers and then scan them from the other add-on. So it's probably a promising future. Okay, that's all from me about the current status of the add-ons. So thank you for your attention. Yeah, sure.
Is it possible to bring back to the version 7 or Hell 7 the possibility to do Ask network, what was before in Hell 6?
You mean
now you have not the possibility to do in menu select network to configure network.
Yeah, I know. Radek can answer that.
Is it possible to do it in the add-on?
You mean like in the very early stage, like? Yeah, it's not possible because actually the add-ons are run when Anaconda starts, so you cannot, for example, do things that early to determine through which interface to fetch a Kickstart or something like that.
We don't do any interactive steps in this early stage except for
You don't want to.
Really don't, because you have to do translations and keyboards, and then I have to go home and cry myself to sleep.
You need to pick the interface via direct options, or we still support case device, but it's deprecated.
Okay, I may go on actually with one more thing. It's just one slide. So it's a very short presentation about Anaconda kexec. You probably know kexec. It's good for testing changes you do to the Linux kernel. But we use it in a different way. You can either specify --kexec when running Anaconda directly, which is not recommended, and nobody should ever do that unless you do some special things, unless you really know what you are doing. Or you can specify reboot --kexec in your Kickstart. I checked, and so far it looks like there is no inst.kexec boot option. I don't know why actually, but it seems like it's just missing in the code somehow. So it should be an easy fix if somebody needs that. Well, basically what happens is that Anaconda loads the installed kernel and initRD image at the end of the installation, and then it runs systemctl kexec, which is faster than a full reboot, but at the very end of the installation you get to a freshly installed system. You skip doing the full reboot, so for example you skip BIOS and you skip the bootloader and things like that. But I would say that it's primarily meant for testing purposes. I'm not sure if we are ever going to support things like, okay, if you want to provision your real system really fast, you should do kexec. I think it's more like, oh, okay, if you are running tests and then you want to see how the installed system works, then run kexec and check that.
Is that option available in the Anaconda version from RHEL 7?
I think so. I think it's RHEL 7.
I've never seen that. It's not documented anywhere, right?
Oh, yeah, okay, let me check. I knew
kexec, but to bootstrap Anaconda setup to not from a running system, but I didn't know that I could do that to just avoid the second reboot. So
yeah, well, I'm not particularly sure. Let me check it and I'll tell you later.
Yeah,
if it's not, then we can just file an RFE and port it to RHEL 7. It should be quite easy.
This was basically the idea. Like, there is certainly stuff we just added because someone asked us, and could be that that didn't really propagate to people using Anaconda, that we have stuff like this. So So yeah, working. Okay. Okay.
No nevím, já tu, nebo ty chceš pokračovat?
Mám hodit útočně třeba možná.
Tak jo, to bude navážeš.
Dobrý, a pak ty, jo? Okay, so like... Okay, so like, yeah, we kinda like hit the question of boot options. Okay. No. Yeah, this looks like Anaconda boot options. Okay. Marvelous. No.
Magic.
So yeah, Anaconda boot options. We've actually, yeah, not that is. Oh, okay. So like we call it's shoe options actually. There's a lot of boot options for Anaconda, and it's actually like it's both boot options and not, because you can run Anaconda as a program. For example, for live CD, on live CD you just have a running system and you run Anaconda as an application. So it's actually also command line argument. Just some of them kind of not make sense when running as a plain application, and some of them kind of don't make sense using them as boot options. But usually, if you look at the arguments, you will find out. 47 of them at the moment. Also, some like technical stuff really use the inst prefix if using these arguments as boot options. Otherwise, you can basically collide with other stuff. Like some people might remember the problem with the debug boot option that got consumed by both kernel and systemd and made the system blow up. So it could be that you can hit something like this because like you do some Anaconda boot option, and for some reason kernel, systemd and whatever might also parse it and like do funny stuff. We don't enforce this prefix yet, but we will probably do that in the future because it's a good thing to do.
It's a good idea to do a separate namespace for user.
Yeah. For example, the DrAdam stuff has the RD something prefix, and I think it's like the way to go for most of these tools. The only problem could be that on some platforms you have some limitations on the length of boot options, and if you do network configuration in, yeah, okay.
I do it.
So
you have bonding configuration there with the JSON.
We have an RFC for passing kickstarts over boot options.
Like the full
so
kickstart.
We kind of rejected it. Yeah, so if you are using it as an application, you can do the same stuff, but like we call it still boot options. Yeah, basically the idea is that we would like to point people to these slides, so it has these huge ass links in it. You can get the slides there. We will get it to the conference room guy, so it should be easy to get to these slides, and this is the information pointer. So if you want to have a listing of the options per rel or per Fedora or like the upstream ones, you get these slides and you get the link. Also, Anaconda, all the options are documented, they have help texts. So if you have Anaconda installed, just run Anaconda --help and you will get all 47 options and description for each of them. So basically it's a ton of options, so I could be there for an hour and list all of them. It would be boring as hell. So basically this is what we use when we develop Anaconda, and I guess it could be useful for others. We know this work and how they work. So for example, if you don't want this annoying welcome screen with selecting the language, set the language via about option and you will get right to the hub. Yeah, updates, stage 2, don't use root live whatever for booting stuff. It's straight way to hell. Basically it's some crazy DrAdam stuff, it's not controlled by us and it does nasty things when booting over the network. Don't ever use it. Use inst point stage 2. Otherwise,
it's crazy then.
Yeah. You don't want to see the code in DrAdam for it. I think it downloads the stage 2 over all interfaces you have on the machine at once.
Find them in
more.
image everywhere.
Don't do that. Yeah, and debug, for example, it's our debug, so inst point debug. We will eat it also, so kernel will eat it and systemd will eat it. Don't do that. Yeah, VNC, you can even do VNC connect, so basically you can have a client running as a server locally, and it's kind of handy. And the Anaconda will connect to, yes?
Yeah, just one question for VNC.
Yeah.
Because I use that option for well, this is for almost 10 years, maybe more, I don't know. Is there a plan to integrate that to SSH journal, for example? Because you can run SSHD now from Anaconda to the machine, but is there a plan? Because VNC is everything but secure, so is it possible to add an option to tunnel that to SSH?
It's an interesting idea.
Because you can start SSH installation and you can start VNC, so then taking VNC through SSH with portal one.
Yeah, it's a great idea, but nobody has ever requested it.
Yeah, the only one doing remote installation all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can run SSH actually and connect via SSH to the installation.
Yeah.
So it should not be that difficult.
You have VNC running in localhost only, and then you can connect with a client via SSH.
So yeah, if you want it as a good option or something, like certainly file a RFE.
It works already. If SSH is running, you can connect with a client.
But you need to do it manually, so it might not be bad to somehow like automate it. I'm not really sure like at the moment how exactly, but certainly a good idea because like it's really insecure. It's like 8 characters password and stuff. Yeah, it no longer sends the password in plain text over network at least. Or at least it was not visible in the Wireshark output. So yeah, image creation. If you have the urge to write your own image creation tool, don't do that. We have this stuff and we have it handled, and I think we did do it in quite the same way. And usually it's not in the same way if you just like make something together. So please use Anaconda for image creation. We know what we are doing in this case. And we have tools like Lorax and what's the correct one? Yeah, it's working. Please use it. Yeah, with more exotic options like the KexEx stuff, Bratislav mentioned, and it's all in the docs. Like it should be at least. If there are any issues with the docs, like it's on GitHub. If it's in the RAL docs, like file Bugzillas, there are people from documentation are really glad when they get feedback and fix stuff really quickly. Remote logging, turn off SSL if you really want to. Geolocation, there is geolocation since RHEL 7 basically, since around like 19. You can turn it off if you want to, or set a different provider. Rescue mode, like it does the wonderful thing, it mounts your root and that's it.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Memory check, basically, the funny thing is that if you are doing a network installation, you actually might need more RAM for installation than for the system, because you are living in the RAM before you format the storage. But if you really think it's incorrect or something, we need to have some margin. You can turn it off with this one.
Yeah, and we have some numbers that are much greater than what we actually need, because if you have less than what we have in those numbers, the installation is really slow and basically unusable. But it's not impossible. So, for example, you can install Fedora with I think it was something slightly over 200 megabytes of RAM. But it's really a long-term thing. So you sometimes need to use the no man check option just to not Anaconda exit early on that check, even though you can install the system.
We already actually do RAM compression, and it helps a lot. It basically lowered our memory requirements by half. Since stuff implemented it, just that RAM and some custom stuff. I think that's it. So yeah, just read this thing and you'll learn the gist of it. Yeah. So I think Radek goes now.
Okay.
I checked that the KexEx is supported on RHEL 7 branch. I'm not sure if it's in the documentation, but definitely on RHEL 7.2.
It's not a good question because I would have seen it, but I will use it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that I'm not quite sure how much our QE and support teams want people to use it. So that maybe yeah. That could be the reason why it's not documented, but it's definitely.
Alternative flexy totiž, no samozřejmě.
Yeah, but suppose that you are living in a CI environment at the moment, that's exactly.
Tak jo. Který to je?
Sometimes new machine, new hardware needs a lot of time just to initialize with UEFI and driver initialization. If I can just avoid the final review, I will submit it to my task because I did one
Myslím si, že ne.
To neměl fungovat normálně.
Svítí to?
Sounds great. And you can even, I think you can even just avoid changing the bootloader configuration because you can have the bootloader set to, or UEFI set to boot into the installation and never boot into the actual system because that always happens through KXX.
So, my name is Radek Vikidal and I'm talking more about development and debugging side, about runtime Anaconda updates, and I will also touch modifying installer for specific products like Fedora workstation and server flavors, which is using basically the same technology at the moment. So we are using runtime updates a lot for debugging and testing, and they are especially useful for issues which we are not able to reproduce locally. We send updates image to customer or to person able to reproduce the bug, and we are kind of developing remotely in this clumsy way. And sometimes we use updates images also for hotfix updates. For example, Fedora common bugs can have a link to updates image which fixes the problem early after release. Updates images allows us to update the installer without rebuilding installer images, which are init.rd image and installer image itself, and also sometimes without rebuilding Anaconda or Livet or PyKickstart with Python packages. What's updates image? It's a compressed CPIO archive of file system overlay. We are using updates images, updates of init.rd. We call it init.rd overlay, and of the installer image. The init.rd overlay is used for the early stage of installation, for where we, for example, fetch installer image, kickstart, driver updates, and installer image updates. Yeah, and the updates image, it updates the file system of the installed environment. So the early stage init.rd overlay, it's applied on top of init.rd root. Example is debugging, parsing kickstart in initramfs. We do it with this Python script. It can be used for testing DrAdam patches. To apply the overlay, you need to install with method which allows you to supply init.rd, of course, and for Pix installation you can just add the overlay to the options. I think this works also in Virt Manager with direct kernel boot. Well, this is just more a convenience thing, because you can also update the init.rd directly. The installer image overlays are more interesting. They are applied during the early Drake stage, and they are overlaying root file system. This is true for Rails 7 and Fedora, where we are using Drake for early stage. In Rails 6, we used to have our own init and loader binaries. So yeah, in Rails 6 the functionality is quite limited, basically to updating the installer and perhaps overriding some libraries. So what are we using the installer image for? We can update Anaconda without need to rebuild the package, but we can also modify config files. For example, I am using it often for increasing logging level of network manager, but I think in next releases we are making it default to debug by default. We can also supply updated RPM package, but then you have to be careful about dependencies of the package. We have a tool for creating updates images, which has an option to try to resolve the dependencies and
actually just like checks the spec file for new stuff.
Yeah.
Since the tag you are using for creating the updates image, and just fetches that. So it's basically mostly for updating our libraries like Blizzard and Python stuff, but if it's not introducing new like third leaf dependencies or whatever, it's really helpful, especially for raw development.
And you can add whatever you want. You can add packages to develop new features. You can add debugging tools. So how we configure the updates image to be used? We can use boot options, kickstart command, or you can put updates image in a default location in installation repo, or for the init.rd image, you can also extract the updates image in a default location, but this is like not very used. So the boot option is inst updates. Basically the updates image can be fetched in always. We're talking about driver update disks, so from via HTTP or from a disk device, and yeah, that's for boot options. For kickstart command, it can be fetched via HTTP. The default location is in installation tree. It's images updates image or images product image. I'll get to this later, to the product image. And the image can be added to the tree during image build process, which is done by Lorax. If you put the content of the image in a specific directory, Lorax will automatically take it and create the updated product image. In initRD, you can put the content of updates image in root in updates directory. It's the uncompressed image. So, product image. Product image is part of installation tree, and it's used for product-specific modifications. Basically, now it contains style sheet to modify look of the installer and product-specific installer code. It's an install class module, Python module, which the install class Python module has no strictly defined API. It's supposed to be provided by the spin providers or product providers, and basically it inherits from Fedora-based install class, modifies some attributes or adds some overrides some methods, but as I said, there is no like really defined API. The modifications we do which are done in product-specific install classes now are style sheet to be used, default file system, for example, Fedora server is using XFS, default software selection, of course, and it can be also default partitioning, which is done in a Fedora Atomic spin. Yeah, as I said, the product image is packaged in a Fedora product image package, and this package is included in Kickstart for composing Fedora spins. So in the Kickstart we exclude other packages and include the package for the product. What the package contains, the product image package. It's the content of product image, the root file system overlay is located in user share Lorax product path, and this is the default location which Lorax picks and then generates images product image in the tree. So for creating updates images, you can do it manually, like put there whatever you want. But for the development and also for other cases, you can use the script we provide in our Git. It's make update script, and it has a few of options. Basic functionality is just to make updates image, which updates the code relatively to some git tag. And it has also an option to add RPM and, as I said, to add RPM dependencies inferred from edit RPMs. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
Any questions?
Shoots around? Oh, fine. To mám asi, ale...
Hej, nahraj tam do tohle.
Máš novější?
Yeah. You know, you must break your slides a few minutes before the presentation.
No. To heslo takhle.
Ne, to je kodovaná část.
Dobrý. No, prostě asi tam 11. Dám to vpravo totiž. No,
So, hi, my name is Jiří Konečný. First of all, sorry for my English. I'm trying to get better, but it's not that good as I want. It's sometimes good to do it a hard way and you get used to it. I hope this won't hear my manager. So, I want to do some little research before. Is here someone from the QA testing or from group which is testing Anaconda? Anyone? Yeah, that's sad. We hoped this will be a mainly presentation for them. So, how many of you did use Anaconda? I think all. Yeah. And how many of you did use GUI for the Anaconda, graphical user interface? Yeah. You don't use it? Oh, really? Okay. So, I hoped I should skip the first slide, but then. So, in graphical user interface, you have two options how to create your partitions and how to prepare your installation, your disk, and so on. So, first is autopart, which is also into a text user interface. That will automatically, automatically, I think, or prepare your free space, and it will create a swap, and it will create a root partition, and so on. And it should work without any user interaction. But if you want something more, you need to go to custom spoke. Custom spoke is somehow creation. It's like gparted, but not with the similar options. You can specify where your partition will be. It will take the first available free space where it could be, and so on. So you will create your root partition, your boot partition swap, and anything you want, no problem. Problem is it has its weaknesses. As I said, when you using custom spoke, it takes first available space, which is not that quite what user want sometimes. Also, it's when you have Btrfs or LVM with snapshots or something like that, you can have plenty of those, and it's not really so easy to remove all snapshots or so on. You must click one by one. So this presentation will be more peek into the future. I will show you what will be in the custom spoke in Fedora 24, and also what will be in the custom spoke in far future. But I think it won't be too far. So, here's what it can do.
You can scroll it with this.
Yeah. What you can do in the custom spoke now? So you can take what format do you want. If you want LVM, we had there Btrfs, but I think we removed it because it's still there.
But not like. I think it's still there.
Yeah, really? Okay. I know there was too many problems with it, but it's possible it's still there. I don't know.
Easier without
No.
it.
Yeah. So it's really nice if you need to work somehow with the LVM. The LVM cache is implemented already.
I'm not sure if it's in the UI.
Yeah, it will be. It will be. It's Bratislav's works on the LVM cache implementation, so it will be here too in the future, or maybe it's in Fedora 23 too. I really don't know now. So that's how it looks now. So new features. Okay, there's a weakness. Sorry, I said that already. So new features. For new Fedora, there will be multi-selection. It should be easy if this will be some standard how it's called, some standard graphical item, graphical interface, but it's our accordion, it's called, and this means to rework about half of it, because it wasn't quite well implemented.
And GTK unfortunately is not flexible enough.
Yeah.
That's stuff we need here.
True.
So yeah.
So it have control selection, shift selection. So it should be easy to remove all of your snapshots and so on with this multi-selection. But in the far future, there should be third option as a new, which is Blivet GUI. You can use it now as a program in Fedora. It will be integrated to the Anaconda, and it should look like this. It's somehow similar to the gparted. You can do here the problem. You can here are removed the problems which was before, like you have 500 megabytes of space before the partition because I want I don't know, give here my coded binary data or whatever. So it should be possible, and I hope it will be in Fedora 25, but I don't know now because it's too much work to done.
Basically, it's the current custom spoke is like top down. You just send, I want an amount point on LVM this big, and it does automatically a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But there are cases where people do want the different thing, and that's Blivet GUI.
Exactly.
Combine all the block devices, LVM, LVs, and everything. So basically, some people want the new stuff, some people would like to have this in.
So basically, you are going back to what we had in the past with Anaconda, like in Fedora 12 or RHEL 6 that you had that visual too.
Yeah, but
going back to what we had before.
Well, it would be like the third option. Like you have autopart, you have the custom spoke, and basically. Yeah, because before people said like this is too complicated, you should do something more less complicated.
So you have now 3 options.
You never make friends in all users. So
yeah, it's hard. That will be all from me. Do you have some questions? Okay. So please leave feedback. Maybe you can convince my other team members to not let me go here again. Okay. Thank you.
I think the most important thing at the moment is to ask the session chair, what's our time? Are we already out of time? Or
No, we still have 25 minutes.
how many?
25.
Okay. So basically, like, we have still some topics, and I think it would be the best to basically ask you which one of them you want to have. When I figure the browser thing, yeah, okay, another path, nice. Okay, so we had boot options. We have basically a presentation covering the Kickstart. It's an overview about the Kickstart format, just the things you can do with it. We have some slides about the Anaconda development, how Anaconda is developed, and how you can contribute to it, where you can find the source code, and which different components are there for Anaconda. And then we have slides from Radek about network configuration, about how you can configure the network in Anaconda, and I think that might be like what we have at the moment. The logging slides are like usable, or yeah, we have some slides about logging in Anaconda. They are not like, they are like alpha, let's say. So we have slides about Kickstart, slides about Anaconda development, and slides about network configuration in Anaconda. So okay, so let's welcome Radek again.
Sorry. So I would like to speak about supported ways, some workarounds and tips about configuring network in DrAdam stage and Anaconda stage of installation. It's all about ifconfig files. We are just working with ifconfig files, creating configuration in these files and copying them to the installed system at the end of installation. I can mention device types we support for various types of installations and some limitations. So the installer is running two stages, DrAdam stage, Anaconda stage. We might need to do network configuration in DrAdam stage, early configuration, and we can configure network also after switching to installer environment. As for this is the configuration of installer networking. The network configuration of target system, as I said, is basically the same as the configuration in installer with some small differences. I will talk about it later. We are also configuring network in initial setup. It was added recently because of the subscription manager add-on added to initial setup.
For example, if someone installs from the DVD, the network is not automatically activated, so the system will not have any network configured. And of course, subscription manager needs to contact the subscription servers. So we added the network scope to the initial setup.
Yeah, and it's kind of rough at the moment because we had quite a lot of assumptions about install environment, and now we are using the network configuration GUI on target system, which is a more complex environment
also the subscription manager people really need to integrate better with the Anaconda networking stuff, because at the moment they don't check if they have network, so that should be hopefully fixed in the next version of the add-on.
The Anaconda is run also in environment, in a live city or live environment. Then there we just step back and let user use the environment tools which have better support for example, for wireless. And basically we don't want to try to screw to like step over this configuration. And also we are running Anaconda for image installs. And then we just don't want to touch system configuration. So yeah, so then the option to configure the networking in the image, if it's required, is basically the post kickstart script, and doing it like creating ifconfig files manually. So early configuration in DrAdam. We are configuring network in DrAdam to fetch installer image, updates image, driver updates, kickstart, and also we are configuring network in DrAdam stage if boot options are preferred way of configuring network for various reasons. The boot options are just DrAdam options. We still support the old days Anaconda options. We translated them in DrAdam options, and they are still working, but the preferred way, they are deprecated, and preferred way is to use just DrAdam IP configuration. There is some aspect of this which is quite tricky, or users sometimes stumble upon it, and that's the default configuration. DrAdam by default tries DHCP on all devices which have link, which is sometimes a problem. And currently the only way to prevent this is supply the device you want to install, you want to configure, and it's either via DrAdam IP option or via bootif option for PXE installations. During kickstart, we process kickstart configuration. Network configuration in kickstart is done with a network command. In DrAdam, we translate the kickstart network configuration into ifconfig files, but this configuration is applied only after switching to installer root. The exception is if you don't activate networking with boot options, or with boot options, then the configuration from kickstart is applied. So it is when kickstart is not fetched over network, but from USB stick from this device, or inject it in DrAdam, for example. So, in DrAcode stage, ifconfig files are created based on kickstart configuration, and DrAcode also creates ifconfig files for connections or configuration. DrAcode sets up it's with DrAcode module write ifconfig. If you want to play with ifconfig files before switching to installer root for some reason, for testing or debugging, there is a way we are using to test stuff. You can supply a DrAcode option to stop, to get shell before switching to installer root, and you can edit ifconfig files which are at this path. So what happens after switch root? Network manager is started, and it starts in parallel with Anaconda. For example, we don't wait for network manager to become online, which sometimes leads to race conditions, and we'll have to work on this. Network manager takes over connections activated in DrAdam, and if for example, kickstart configuration, if config files created based on kickstart configuration are different from the config of device created in DrAcode, it applies these changes, these ifconfig files. Now, it's possible that there are also devices which don't have any don't have any configuration, and we need to handle this somehow. On workstations, or if the network manager's server package isn't present, network manager creates default auto connections for devices without ifconfig files. So in installer, we then dump this configuration into ifconfig files. When these auto connections are not created, we create default ifconfig files. So basically, we assume that every device has ifconfig file during installation and after installation. Oh. Sorry. Yeah, as I said, ifconfig files based on kickstart are applied by a network manager after switch root. There is a bit different situation if you define your networking in pre-kickstart session, like dynamically, like you create your configuration dynamically based on, I don't know, sniffing the system. Then the configuration is created by Anaconda calling network manager's dbus API. So here Anaconda creates the connections. In other cases, it's just network manager picking up the ifconfig files. Then there is GUI and TUI. network configuration, we have a standalone install or UI very early GUI screen, which prompts for configuring network if we detect that it's network installation, and then we have a network screen just on the main hub. We are calling network manager connection editor to create configurations. We are running this tool and wrapping it in some UI just for turning devices on and off and listing devices, displaying configuration of devices. There is, if for debugging or for various reasons, for adding something we don't support in our wrapper, you can start a network manager connection editor from the shell, from terminal, from TTI2. As for text user interface, the configuration is limited to Ethernet devices. For other configuration like bonding, DOM, other complex, other virtual devices, NMCLI, network manager command line client can be used in shell in TTY2. And installer should survive creating connections with this tool. And in TextUI it should also display the devices if they are activated. IBF different configuration. I don't know if it's interesting for you. I think I can skip this one. And so, as for the configuration of target system, as I said, we just copy ifconfig files to the target system. So, the way to have a different configuration in installer and in target system is activating a device with install configuration via boot options and then overriding ifconfig file via kickstart. And yeah, so the kickstart shouldn't be applied, the kickstart configuration overriding the device configuration, unless you supply activate option. In this case, it is also applied in installer. Or you can change the configuration in GUI, but in Fedora, actually, we are auto-applying the change configuration, which is debatable, but yeah, we heard a request to do that. Another option relevant to target system configuration is on-boot option, which tells if the device should be auto-activated or the connection should be auto-activated after reboot. It's also debatable stuff, and we are imposing some on-boot policy in installer. For example, for Fedora, if you install without networking, we enable a device with link we find for reboot, so we set on boot to yes for this device. We are also generating DrAdam configurations for network storage, for iceberg, for example, or root on iceberg. So to create the configuration for target system needs to be created in installer. So you can, for example, you cannot create a configuration for device with name that is not at the system at the moment of the installation. So, for example, when generating cloud images, you just, it's how Fedora spins are doing that. They just drop completely manually created ifconfig file to the right place. As for supported device types, we support Team, Bond, VLAN, and Bridge in boot options, Kickstart, GUI. As I said, these are not displayed in. They are not supported in text user interface. The workaround is to use NMCLI in shell in terminal. As for wireless, it can be configured in GUI, but not via Kickstart, not with boot options. We used to support it at some point, but the functionality was removed and no one asked for it. So. But for workstation, you can, for example, for Fedora workstation, you can configure wireless easily in live environment. You should do it before starting the installation. Some selected limitations. Yeah, the same configuration in installer and target system. No option to create configuration specifically for target system. Auto apply of config change in GUI. That's what I was talking about. It can be limiting for some user cases. We are not passing configuration of static routes to target system, but I think we will fix it soon. And yeah, Network Manager and Anaconda starting as services in parallel are causing race conditions with detecting if networking is available in some cases. So we need to work on this too.
Can I just add another good point maybe to the slide?
Yeah.
The ATH2 option has been removed a long time ago, meaning that at the moment if you have to remotely install a machine in a DC where the switch is misconfigured and fixed to 100 megabits per second port, Network Manager will just try negotiation and doesn't have any option at all. So your machine is going back to 10 megabit hard duplex or 10 megabit hard duplex. So do you think it would be a good idea to have Anaconda add the option back?
What was that?
To configure when you configure the interface at the moment, DrAdam can't do it, and Anaconda has the option to set the speed and duplex settings for a network card. If auto negotiation fails, which happens quite a lot because there are a lot of switches misconfigured in the world, it takes age to configure the machine. And I don't know because of that. Because Network Manager was trying to configure the interface, and Anaconda tried. At the time also we ran it crashed.
Guys, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's another round of workshops starting here in 10 minutes, so we can finish discussions outside. There are also places.
Yeah.
Basically, slides should be also there. I'm giving them to the session share. Yeah. I'm fully blocked about it in the future. So. Yeah. Thanks for coming here. And I hope it will be at least somehow useful for you. Nice.
Hej, pojď, máš tam ty slidy stáhný?
To tam nahrávám, počkej.
Nenahrával, já jsem to znamená spustil.
Sakra. Jak to tam narví a zatím tady nahraju ty...
Myslím, že můžeme tohle odpojit vzadu.
No jasně, dobře, to bude potřeba obrazovka vždycky. Spadá jenom se určitě nevím.
Nálepku na čelo.
No.
Jenom jednu.
To taky nálepku na čelo. A musíš si na čelo.
Takže, teďka je ta fleška.
Tam je nedělej nikdo. Je tam
Sandej? Je to A112, to jsou ty, tak.
Jo, a tam je Sandej.
Jo. Tak já nevím, já ti dám vyrovnat složku, že my tam máme 1000 oborů prostě. Anaconda.
Ty jsem rozdávat se budu. Kdy mají dostat.
No, já ti to tam dám všecko a to už se to nějak vyznáš, ne? Nebo počkej.
Pomůžem s něčím?
Já
tam...
co potřebuješ.
Tak,
jsme dali do složky, ty obrázky vidí.
To je ta složka, jsme tam dali.
Tak to tu můžeme
tak, a to je ta tvoje fložka.
Tempo.
Tempo. Dobrý,
a dej tam image a presentation hotový.
Tam. Nazdar. Tak a ty máš ty kokotiny, to tam nedávají smysl a bude hotovo.
To je taky tohle? Co?
Tohle. Pryč.
Mám HDMIčko a legáčko. Jo.
Možná ti tam mají něco zbyde na té flešce. Možná ti tam mají něco zbyde potom bazání na té flešce.
Co, já nevím, já jsem tu flašku dostal dneska do ruky.
Jo.
To nezmažte, prosím vás, protože...
A myslím, to bude celkem
ale to se zase malo znovu.
Počkej, já to dostal skvrté, já jsem to dostal do ruk.
Ty nemáš už žádný ty?
A to si jdete na slide.
Ne, jo, to je ta na slide.
Víceméně ty HTML, ty obrázky prostě, to jakože...
A jdeš toho vygenerovat PDF-ko? To je nějaký ten...
Tak teoreticky otevřeš si prostě, ty HTML věci si otevřeš
no to já vím.
A vyděláš to PDF normálně v Firefoxu